Good morning, everybody, and what an amazing conference so far. So before I start, I just want to start by thanking and acknowledging the Okanagan Nation for inviting us onto their unceded territory. So it's my pleasure to facilitate this session today. The theme is Sustainability Agendas and Health Promoting Campuses Exploring Potential Synergies, and with a particular focus on ecosystems. And I actually think that the keynotes that we had yesterday from Mark Duris and just now from Richard Keeling really nicely set us up for a discussion around the need to look for synergies between the sustainability and health movements. Thank you. So just to tell you a little bit about my own sort of journey in this space, I've been working about 10 years in the sustainability space, primarily around sport actually, and how that can be a vehicle for leveraging change. And over the years, my own thinking shifted to the need to take, we pay lip service to the social side or health side, but the need to really integrate those two as an effective way of leading to change. So just to give an example, last year at UBC, we hosted the Canada Special Olympics Summer Games, which, for those of you who don't know, that's the largest event in Canada for people with intellectual disabilities. And one of the more remarkable pieces in the Special Olympics movement is that Healthy Athletes screening program built in has some remarkable outcomes. So during the games, for example, the majority of the 1,400 athletes that participated had health screenings for free, and the majority had undiagnosed medical conditions that were caught. And that's in Canada with free healthcare system. So that's a pretty remarkable outcome. And so when we looked at how we could have a sustainability program in the games and also health promoting program, it was much more powerful for us to have food projects or bottled water free efforts or active transport projects by linking those two together. And I think we were able to lead to much stronger change. And we framed a lot of this around the idea of net positive change or regenerative sustainability, which you'll hear about in a minute. So the focus of today's panel is to expand our notions about sustainability agendas and how they might inform the health promotion work. So we have a terrific panel today. Our first two presenters are both academics at UBC, and they've done extensive work under the sort of broad umbrella of sustainability, but each has a very different focus. And so we'll get a short presentation from each of them to lead off the session. And following that, we will have a Q&A discussion where Mark Duris will join us, and then we can have a discussion about the interplay between these two agendas. So I'll introduce our first speaker, Dr. James Tansey. And you may notice that initially in the program we had John Robinson. He unfortunately, due to circumstance, couldn't join us today, and he wanted me to pass on his regrets. But James has come at the last minute up from Vancouver, and we really appreciate him doing that. James is the Associate Director for the UBC Sustainability Initiative, and also the Executive Director for the Center for Social Innovation and Impact Investing at the Sauder School of Business. His research includes social enterprise, climate change, social impacts, acceptability of new technologies. And we also share a passion around sport and sustainability, having done with your work with Vancouver 2010. So James, I'll pass it over to you.
Great.
And I'll kick off your presentation here.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much for the introduction, Matt. Having heard the last talk, I'm starting to question whether I'm actually qualified to give this presentation. I woke up at 4:30 this morning, got on a plane, flew to Kelowna. I'm staying here for an hour and a half. I'm flying back. That doesn't sound very healthy. With one of my 3 full-time jobs at UBC, one of the things I do is work with MBA students where they pay a large sum of money for the privilege of basically being hazed for 15 months. And they're so committed to this practice that if you ease up on them and make things too easy for them, they complain that you're not making them work hard enough. I may just also, based on this morning's presentation, I may just take that bikini back that I bought. It was an impulse buy, and it really called out to me, and I just. After this presentation, I think I'm gonna go back to the one-piece swimsuit. I think it's the only way to go. So I'm responsible for the University Sustainability Initiative at UBC. Who here has been to the UBC campus? Okay, so lots of people have seen it. I've been working with this initiative now for almost 10 years and have stepped in as the acting director just in the last couple of weeks, but I'm heavily involved in the way that we've developed the campus and the way we've changed how we think about the campus. So what I want to talk about today is the University Sustainability Initiative, both as a model for health promotion, but also to talk about some of the ways we thought about health promotion and well-being as part of a broader sustainability strategy on the campus. And this is an initiative which really started as a series of projects looking at the environmental performance of the campus, shifted to become something that was much more programmatic, and ultimately has been really integrated into the core of how UBC sees itself and how UBC describes itself to the world. And to that extent, we've seen integration both across academic output and research, across the way we approach teaching, and then also really into the core of how we allocate capital and resources within the university. And that's really a transformation that I think is unusual within universities. Not to say that we've got it all right, but there have been some really interesting lessons which I think could apply equally well to health promotion. Let me just try and advance this. So the sustainability discourse, the way it's presented traditionally and has been presented for the last 20 years is kind of a bummer. It's a bit of a downer. And this is a big part of the reason I got out of working in sustainability in a resource management department and sort of smuggled my way into a business school. It was kind of a Trojan horse exercise because I had no real credentials to move into business. I had no MBA, I had an environmental sciences degree, but I spent a long time working on the diagnostic side of sustainability, hearing about what the problems were and the challenges were and the immovable, intractable character of many of the issues we define and identify in terms of environmental sustainability, and just thought, I don't really want to spend the rest of my career on the diagnostic side. I'd like to work on the intervention side. And for me, business models and business approaches to delivering on sustainability with a platform that brought me into the school. But I think that narrative is something that defines one of the real challenges with sustainability. It's actually alienating for many people to hear about the scale and size and dimensions of the problem. The potential for, a sixth mass extinction, I think was the latest headline from Stanford last week. The idea that we need 3.5 planets to give everybody the same lifestyle that North Americans have. It's one of those metaphors that rings true when you first hear it, but then, of course, we realize we don't have 3.5 planets or an option to do that. So I think a lot of the discourse and dialogue around sustainability is disempowering simply because the impact, the scale of the challenge is so vast and is presented in such a way that it prevents people being able to tackle it. What it leads to, in fact, and what it drives in many ways is a kind of apathy or indifference towards the problems. So I think the sustainability discourse has to shift, and I think much of what we've been able to do at UBC has embraced this concept of regenerative sustainability, which recognizes, first of all, that we need to find solutions to many of these problems, and secondly, we need to go beyond just repairing the damage. We actually need to get into a restorative mode where we improve and enhance the physical environment around us to really offset the damage we've done or the impacts and cost on in terms of the negative ledger that we're carrying that we'll be contributing and passing on to our children. So it limits the storyline, it's disempowering, it doesn't motivate, it doesn't go far enough in terms of repairing the damage, and also the sustainability discourse tends to focus very much on the environmental side and on the science of sustainability. And ultimately what we're trying to do through the discourse of sustainability is rethink the way we create and manage economic growth within our communities, within our societies, and create alternative ways of thinking about how we generate and perform and enhance well-being going forwards. So UBC, at the core of its sustainability strategy, has enhanced this idea of regenerative sustainability. So get away from discussions about how do we make the world less bad towards how do we make the world a better place? How do we shift the dialogue away from reducing damage towards creating benefits? How do we shift from sacrifice to contribution? How do we shift from net zero or climate neutrality or carbon neutrality to something that's net positive or environmentally positive? And again, I think this is more than just shifting the rhetoric or the dialogue or the way we describe sustainability. Sitting in the context of a business school, it's moving beyond this concept that all approaches to delivering on sustainability involve trade-offs. You can't achieve higher environmental performance without there being some impact on profits. In the field that I work in impact investing and social innovation, we look at large-scale investment models for introducing new technologies. So, for instance, introducing new solar-based technologies into developing countries that will never build grid-based infrastructure the way that we have transmission lines into those communities. And so, there's an incredible company called M-Copa that works in sub-Saharan Africa that leases people solar lighting systems so they don't have to burn kerosene, they don't have to burn wood, and people pay for those solar lighting systems using their cell phones. So very simple, not smartphones, but just simple cell phones where they buy their credits, and as long as they pay a small amount each month, which is less than what they used to pay for kerosene, the solar light stays on. So that's not a trade-off based approach to thinking about sustainability. That's actually opening up better environmental performance, better social outcomes, and creating profitable businesses. I saw a presentation a couple of weeks ago by Levi's Jeans, which is a 150-year-old family-owned company. Most people don't realize that Levi's Jeans is one of the most sustainable apparel companies in the world. They came up with the waterless jeans. They completely changed the dyeing process behind production of jeans like the classic 501s. And what they did through their foundation was invest in improving healthcare in and around the factories that their suppliers managed. And by investing in rudimentary healthcare provision for the workers, they actually demonstrated significant improvements in the performance and productivity of those workers by providing more security, by reducing work loss days, by reducing injuries, not in the workplace, but in the home. So again, it's another great example on a large scale of where we just got to get it beyond this idea that there's trade-offs of doing the right thing and then also improving economic performance. So why are universities great test beds for sustainability? Campus-based universities in particular are uniquely situated and set up for this role. They tend to have single owner occupiers. Some of the biggest challenges in terms of building infrastructure, for instance, is that you have one group of people who invest in building a building. They want to sell that as quickly as possible, pass it on to the owner, who then wants to reduce the operating costs of that building. That creates an agency problem where the person building the building has no incentive to really reduce the operating costs. In universities, we build the buildings, we operate them, we also have our own staff and personnel in them, so we have an incentive to make sure they're as healthy as possible, and we're responsible for the operating costs. So we're owner-occupiers, we have a strong public mandate, we have this incredible opportunity to transform the way people think about their own infrastructure through teaching and through research. And we also have, in many ways, for a university like UBC, which is 60,000 people on it on a busy day, 14 million square feet, it's the largest transit destination in the province, it really functions and operates like a small town. And it captures and represents a microcosm of many of the problems most major cities and towns in the world face. It's also, from a governance perspective, less vulnerable to the 4 to 5 year electoral cycle that most cities and most government institutions are saddled with. In the best case scenario, the university president can be a benign dictator. Actually, I think the best model for university presidents and deans is a weak monarch surrounded by strong barons and baronesses. So if you can manage that benign dictator effectively, you actually have the ability to make long-term decisions that get away from the sort of short-termism that the political cycle creates. So we've really thought about the university campus as an opportunity to demonstrate, to do research, and to also engage the students. There's a very strong dual mandate within UBC that I think is unique, or almost unique amongst universities, in the sense in which it combines both academic engagement with operational engagement. The universities tend to be silos. The administration and the faculty don't interact and don't talk to each other. And this is, I think, has been one of the foundations of the success of the UBC campus. So the two cross-cutting themes in the campus as a living lab are, the two cross-cutting themes is, how do we take this small town that we run and operate and turn it into a living laboratory for demonstrating clean technologies, for improving the performance of buildings and of our infrastructure, of it creating a town that's almost devoid of cars. You can drive to the sort of edges of the campus, but most of the movement around the campus is on foot or on bikes. And then also, how do we position the university, not just in terms of improving its own performance, but as an agent of change within the wider community? And the rest of these slides, I'm going to talk mostly about the campus as a living laboratory. If we look at one of the big initiatives on the campus, it's been to transform the way that we generate heat and power within the campus, to create an interconnected energy system that allows us to take waste heat from one part of the university and move it through a hot water-based system to other parts of the university. That transformation represents a 20 to 30% reduction in energy use on the campus by just being able to think more holistically about the way we use energy. In terms of the performance, from 2007 to 2014, we've seen the greenhouse gas emissions on the campus fall by about 22%, at the same time that the campus footprint and the campus population has grown significantly. So again, by being intentional, by investing in the infrastructure, and by having both a strong baseline and clear targets and goals, we've been able to transform the way the campus operates. There are 4 signature projects that some of you may have heard of, that have been really integrated into the way that we deliver campus sustainability. One is just taking the buildings that we inherit from an operational perspective once developed, the development team is finished with it, and not see it as a finished project, but see it as a platform for continuous learning and optimization of the systems. Most buildings outside of university campuses fail energy efficiency tests, not because they were badly designed or badly built, not because they weren't thought through, but because they're not calibrated, because they're not managed properly, because they're not continuously optimized. Because we forget that buildings are places that people come in and out of all the time, that they can come off calibration, that we learn about them as we use them. So continuous optimization allows us to do that. Center for Interactive Research on Sustainability is a second example, is really an example of a regenerative building that captures water, that recaptures heat from surrounding buildings, that sequesters carbon in the infrastructure of the building. It's built primarily from wood, and captures energy from solar lighting systems. It processes and manages most of the grey water that's produced within the building. So it actually makes, it's an incredible example of a building that takes a part of the campus and actually makes it better than it was before the building was built. You can see a lot about what that building means in regenerative terms in some of the detailed information on it, but it's a net positive generator of energy. It sequesters more carbon than it uses. It improves the water quality within the part of the campus, and it captures structural carbon in the building. But more importantly, when we looked at the financial model, and this is really the segue into the theme of this conference, into the health side of things, a building that's built better, that has natural daylighting on every horizontal surface, that's accessible, that has great air quality, that has great air circulation with none of the traditional forced air or air conditioning systems, has an incredible positive impact on health. The lecture theatre at the center of the building, which seats 500 people, looks very different from this lecture theatre. It has natural daylighting on each side, lots of open exposed wood, has great air quality. And when we look at this, to come back to the financial model, when we look at this in terms of what that means for the bottom line, for the dollar value of the building, the benefits, the financial value of building a better building in the first place, in terms of health outcomes, in terms of productivity, far outweigh the benefits in terms of environmental performance. So building good, healthy buildings in the first place reduces absenteeism, increases productivity, increases employee engagement. And this is one of the critical metrics I think we need to get better at integrating into the way that we think about sustainability, to capture it from the pure environmental sustainability agenda and integrate it much more strongly from a health perspective. I can see Matt hovering on the edges, so I should I should move just towards my conclusions. I think there's two or three areas where we really need to think about this stronger integration of health promotion with the sustainability agenda. The first is to really take the examples that I talked about today, which is build better, healthier buildings, build better infrastructure in the first place, make universities examples of how cities and municipalities can and should be built. Use them as demonstration sites. We can test things out in a way that a municipality or a corporation can't do. And we also have the research capabilities to monitor the benefits of those. The second areas that I think are really genuinely lacking, and I think the first speaker today spoke about this, I don't think we figured out how to fully engage employees in that long-term health agenda. Most employees who join universities and most HR systems with universities are set up for hiring people and maintaining them as their relationship with them as employees for most of their lives. Most of the faculty who operate within universities expect to stay in that university post-tenure and may spend 30 or 40 years there. We don't think about our relationship with those faculty and with those long-term administrative staff from the perspective of a stakeholder or from a long-term engagement. We're more worried about entitlements, we're more worried about long-term labor contracts, we're more worried about salaries. We don't actually think of this in terms of through the lens of citizenship, through the lens of engagement, and through the lens of stakeholders. And I think we need to get beyond the sort of traditional polarized approaches that our HR systems and labor relations systems create, and recognize that as long-term employees of universities, we're actually stakeholders in a very different way. And I think in the last area, although we have started to think differently both about how we recruit students into the university. In the business school, we used to use just grades to recruit people, which led to an arms race amongst the schools in the region, an escalation of grades, and they suddenly became a terrible metric for recruiting the next generation of managers. We shifted to a broad-based entry approach where students have to demonstrate activity, sports, community service, broad-based engagement. You know, there's a small chance that they might actually arrive at the university with a modicum of character rather than just the grades, which is, I think, a big improvement for training the next generation of managers. After that, though, we have, you know, we stand in a classroom and we teach people about good HR and employee engagement and values, value-led leadership and value-led organizations, and then we subject our MBA students to a hazing ritual that they pay for the privilege of. You know, we start out at the beginning of each year with bright, enthusiastic students who are keen to be there, and, you know, 15 months later and 20 pounds of body mass growth and sleep deprivation, we launch them out into the world and say, go ahead and take these lessons and turn them into, you know, inspire your own employees to do it. We don't do what we preach in the classroom when we teach business and MBA students, and I think the same thing applies to engineering and forestry and students across the board. We don't practice what we preach. We've got a 100-year-old monastic model of teaching that's you know, borderline hazing, and it doesn't create the kind of environment or leadership skills that our students need. So I think we have to in many ways be the example and the microcosm for the rest of society, and we have to start by changing the way that we teach and inspire students.